Now, I'm pleased to be joined live from London by writer and broadcaster Esther Krakue. Esther, great to see you. Happy New Year. So much to talk about here. And I've got to talk about this really disturbing story. UK opposition leader Kemi Badenoch has demanded the sacking of the West Midlands Police Chief Craig Guilford because he apparently banned Israeli fans from a Europa League match at Aston Villa in November and apparently played down threats of violence from Muslim fans in an attempt to have an excuse to ban Israeli fans. Esther, this sounds really disturbing. What's the story here?
I mean, what this story shows is the degree of ideological capture and how easy it is for our public institutions to be ideologically taken over by what in this case looks like Islamists. So what happened is the West Midlands Police banned Tel Aviv fans from going to Birmingham to watch this match and citing that there was a higher risk of violence, indicating from the Israeli fans. What then transpired after he was badgered about it by Nick Timothy, who's a Conservative MP, was actually the threat was coming from local residents. So Birmingham, for many people who don't know, it has a significant Muslim population. I'm sure it's probably pushing towards half the city at this point. And so no one in Britain actually was very surprised by this. What we were surprised by was the fact that the police chief argued that the threat looked like it was coming from Tel Aviv fans. Now, the investigation was in and of itself by the police, who put together an advisory board to consult on this matter, was shoddy at best. They basically made the decision and then put together some flimsy excuses to justify it. One constable said he had a phone conversation with a Dutch police officer. This phone conversation didn't have any minutes, by the way, so the public doesn't even know what transpired during this phone conversation. And then that was, according to the police, the basis for which they decided to say, okay, we're going to ban these fans. And now what's transpired is actually the threat came from the local Muslim residents. One of the people on the advisory board was actually an independent MP who's called for Israel to be banned from all international sports, so very non-biased guy there. And when he was asked why he didn't specify that the threat was coming from local residents, he said, and I quote, "Because we weren't asked." So that's the quality of our police chiefs.
Esther, I'm seeing a bit of a pattern here in stories out of the UK where when there is Islamist violence involved, there is a tendency to play it down by the authorities.
Oh yes, but the root of that is ideological capture. The fact that not just this independent Muslim MP, Mr. Khan, was on this board, but there are actually other individuals on this advisory group who've also openly called for Israel to be banned from sports. You just think, okay, so what was your selection process? Did you not think some degree of political neutrality, or at the very least balance, was required here? And this is the kind of same pattern, unfortunately, that you're seeing with the grooming gang scandal. Why were so many thousands of white British girls predominantly being raped and targeted by mainly Pakistani men in Britain? Well, it's because no one wants to speak about it, because our institutions have been ideologically captured. So they're too nervous to upset the wrong people, even though the crimes being perpetrated against these girls are as heinous as they come.
Just want to get through a couple of the stories, Esther, before I let you go. First of all, news of a new potential ceasefire deal involving Vladimir Zelensky, but Emmanuel Macron and Keir Starmer have been involved, and apparently there's going to be some commitment of British troops to Ukraine, potentially to help to guarantee a ceasefire. Walk us through this, and how is this being received?
Well, it's taken almost 4 years for European allies to establish that they're actually willing to put boots on the ground to defend Ukraine. The coalition of the willing, as it's being quoted or described, is only basically two willing countries, which is the UK and France. And surprisingly, the US has decided to offer a backstop, saying that if there was any military action or incursion by the Russians, they would help reinforce that. But again, the state of the militaries, both in France and certainly in the UK, is as pathetic as they come. For over 30 years, our military has been underfunded and hollowed out. Our standing armed forces could not fill up Wembley Stadium. If you got together Taylor Swift fans under the age of 12, there are more of them in one night than we have the entire armed forces to protect the UK. So the logistics of this is just mind-blowing.
That is shocking. Hey, one more shocking story, Esther, quickly here. Another story that apparently police in Britain have been told not to arrest people for cannabis possession, and they say basically that if you've got some weed on you, you can say, oh, well, that's just medicinal, you've got to let me go, and the police have to take your word for it. Now, I'm going to put it out there. I'm not a fan of weed culture. I don't think this is a high achievement sort of drug that people are taking, and I think this is going to be a disaster because I've seen it in America. But what do you reckon?
I think the fact that this even needs to be said just shows how basically not active the police have been in that. You have many people since 2018 that have been given medicinal licenses to use marijuana. But again, these make up about a third of the actual, investigations by the police. The vast majority of them are not for medicinal purposes. And you're seeing the actual rise in mental health issues, particularly amongst Black men in Britain that have a much higher likelihood of schizophrenia using these kinds of drugs. And you're just thinking, well, this is a public health crisis waiting to happen. But again, this doesn't surprise me at all.
Well, Esther, do you have that issue in London like you have in cities like New York and around the United States, where there are basically pot dispensaries that are handing out very high caliber marijuana that's much stronger than what people were smoking 20 years ago, causing all sorts of mental health issues?
Well, thankfully, we don't have shops that blatantly sell sort of high strength marijuana because it's still classed as a drug. But yes, many of our parks around the UK just stink of weed, really strong, disgusting smelling stuff. And again, you're seeing a rise in sort of public health, sort of mental health issues associated with this drug. So the link is undeniable at this point.
Right. Okay. And what about the other drug issues around the UK? Is there a problem with this diverting attention from other drug enforcement problems with, cocaine or other sorts of issues?
Well, we haven't just to kind of give a broad overview. We haven't reviewed our drug policy here in the UK, the Drug Misuse Act, for over 50 years. So
Right.
clearly, we just implement a policy and never review it, and we just throw public money at it, regardless of whether it's more effective. Potent hard drugs are more available and more potent and cheaper than ever before, and yet the police just take a few off the street, and then seconds later, a higher dosage is flooded back onto the street. So our
Eh,
policing of hard drugs is completely ineffective.
Esther Krakue, it sounds like an absolute disaster there, but thank you for bringing us all the news from the UK. Really appreciate it there.